today I wanted to make a little short video about one of my favorite RPG games of all times, Final Fantasy VII. Somewhat recently it got a remake, and there are a few little things that I don't quite like about the remake. So here's just about it, just some constructive criticism. If you like everything about the game, good for you. But for me that game was a mixed bag. So here's just what I didn't like. The main thing is that back in the old days you used to get like a whole game. Now they just sell it in pieces. I mean, how is it that a PS1 game or something had like more content in one disc than like a next generation game? And it's not as if it was a matter of time. I mean, they had 10 years. I mean, if they had at least just done this one, it would have worked out great. This one has a lot of cool things that happen. The next thing I didn't like about the game is that like Sephiroth showed up way too much. Sephiroth is like the cherry on top of the sundae, not the whole sundae itself. Too much Sephiroth. He became less special. The other thing I didn't like about the game is that, well, it's obvious, is you spend the entire game in Midgar, and like, Midgar's not my idea of a good time. I mean, especially the slums. I mean, I've been around a little bit, and like the slums in Colombia don't look as bad as the slums in Midgar. And in the news they show you slums in Brazil. The slums, favelas in Brazil are not as bad as the slums in Midgar. It's like you spend years studying and like going to university, and what for? In order to like render a beautiful pile of garbage. A pile of garbage is not what I imagine as my Final Fantasy, I mean, that's just me. And even the thing about the top plate, how the Midgard people, the privileged people live, it wasn't really like a big deal. It was like a realistic depiction of a salaryman's house in Japan, It's like, I was thinking, like the people on the top plate would live in like something futuristic, The game has a lot of cool futuristic stuff here and there, but then like a lot of run-of-the-mill that, you just took a random photo of something and then you just animated it next, like. But stuff, I want a little more fantasy in my Final Fantasy. It's too realistic. I don't like realism, I play Final Fantasy games to get away from reality. Alright. The next thing that I did not like about the Final Fantasy VII Remake is that it had like a bit too many experts for like the point of the game. You get your first expert or summon gym expert, same thing. Potatoes, chivas, You get way too many of them, like, way too early. The first one that you're supposed to really get is, like, Chocomog, and then, like, they're already, like, there's this random kid with VR that looks like a Sephiroth clone, and then he'd be like, look, Cloud, with this VR set, I'm gonna give you Shiva. You're gonna get Ifrit. Like, that makes the expert less special. If any random chump with a VR set can have you like fight a simulation of Shiva, and then bam, you get Shiva, bam, you get Bahamut. Turns out that Yuna didn't need to go through the entire cycles of her game. She just needed a VR set, and bam, she would have gotten the final end. Like, come on, a VR set to get ants. I mean, I guess it was fun, but like it made a little bit less magical. It had to be more fantasy. Another thing I didn't like about is the redesign of Tifa. She's a little too chaste, if you get my meaning. Like, the original version was fine, it was fine for the 90s. Why is it bad in the modern age, Like, I really do hate what this world's becoming, man. Like, the original Final Fantasy VII was, like, much more liberal than the new version of it. Like, what happened? Like, are we like taking steps back in the progress of the whatever for like whatever reason? I don't know, man. I just didn't like how Tifa looked. If they wanted to give her like a new design, they could have just used one of the other random sketches that I think it was his name, Yoshi something, Amano. I'm gonna put the proper spelling of it, like, his rendition of Tifa was one of the proper ways to go. He knew how to design Final Fantasy VII characters, so if you wanted to give Tifa a new look, you should have worked with one of his original designs, not like what they did to Tifa that was the same thing that they did to Wonder Woman. She looked fine. There was no problem with the way Wonder Woman looked from the 40s, and then suddenly you get to like the post 2000, 2020, and then suddenly there's something wrong with the way that Wonder Woman looks, even though she looked like fine in the oldies. I mean, like, what's happening here, man? I don't know. I just didn't like the way that Tifa looked. Another thing I didn't like about the Final Fantasy VII Remake, I can see why they call it a remake, because it's not a remaster, it's a remake. They're like changing things here and there, but keeping other things here and there. But frankly, I think that the whole little changes was just to get randoms to talk about the game in the internet. You know, they learned those silly little tactics from the masters of marketing in Disney. I mean, just think, it's brilliant. They made a terrible movie and they sold it twice, you know? The Snyder Cut ended up being terrible, and you know, you paid to see a terrible movie twice. That's brilliant. By spreading the myth that somehow, somewhere out there, there's like the ideal movie, and then I'm still waiting for the proper Final Fantasy VII Remake. I don't consider this like a true whatever. It's just like I just pretend I might eventually just pretend it doesn't exist. And if I ever do talk about Final Fantasy VII, I'm just gonna be referring to the original one, not the remake. Oh, and the movie. I like the movie. Okay, I didn't like the motorcycles. Too much motorcycle. It was like fun a little bit, but like after spending like an hour in the motorcycle scene, you know, evading and like this and that, it felt like every other motorcycle scene in every video game that I played. They were annoying in the Mega Man games, and they were annoying in the Final Fantasy games. That's why they were just a little short section and not like the core of the game. And also for like these new extra characters, like this Kadash looking guy, and then like the little Sephiroth clone kid that gives you like, ooh, here, Cloud, look, I have a solution to all of your problems. Here, Shiva, I got you, Shiva, on this VR set. You gotta love it, Shiva. Coming straight out of a VR set. Wouldn't that be wonderful? You put on a VR set and bam, you have Shiva. You want to catch a Bahama? No, you just put on a VR set and then you get it. Bahama, okay. Okay, enough about the VR set. Okay, Wedge and Weevil. I didn't care much of them the first time. I didn't care much about them the second time. They told me more about their tragic backstory. They were background characters, man. I barely got to know them in the first 5 minutes I played with, like in the little bit of the game, and I barely know them now, and I barely care about them. And I barely care about this other person. So yeah. I also didn't like too much the dialogue of Cloud. He sounds a little too Advent Children, and Cloud should sound more like Zack. That was the whole point. Cloud wanted to be other people. That's why he put on dresses and wigs and went to be a soldier because he wanted to be Sephiroth, and then eventually got his wish, and then he hated it. Like Cloud, the original Cloud wasn't happy with himself. He wanted to be anything else but Cloud, and eventually that was part of his arc, that Cloud learns to be okay with who he is. He doesn't need to be like Sephiroth. He doesn't need to be like Tifa. He is okay just being Cloud, and that is fine. And that's basically what I got out of the first game. But like the dialogue, he should be sounding more like he's pretending to be Zack. Is like Zack even gonna be a scene? Did he get edited out of the game? You know, like I don't even remember like Iris mentioning Zack over the top, and I'm like, I don't know. Then again, I'm kind of starting to block out what I actually ended up playing of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. You know how it is, like you play something that you don't kind of like, and then your brain be like, well, is this necessary that? Nope. Out of here. Okay, so yeah. Iris. She was like super more annoying than usual. I kind of like when since Zephyr is showing up, so might well say do us all a favor and like get rid of her already. I mean, like, she was like extra annoying, and that was a little annoying. Okay, the other thing that I didn't like about the Final Fantasy game was the little material thing, you know, like the material placement. They were like, you want the material? You want the material? Yeah, go get it, go get a player. And then the player is supposed to be like, like a little dog and chase after the materials, you know, like, come on. And then, like, you know, I also didn't like about the game those Kingdom Hearts nobody that show up saying, give us what we want. It felt like they were just personifying the gamers, you know, like, oh, you're a bunch of creepy little zombies. It doesn't matter what we do, you're gonna hate it. It felt like that's why, like, they were personifying, like, the old fans of the game. It doesn't matter what they do, they're gonna hate it. And it turns out they were right. You know, like, why do they have, like, nobody in there? I mean, I know that the Final Fantasy characters are supposed to be in the Kingdom Hearts game, but I really didn't want nobody in my Final Fantasy game. We could have done without that. Well, I think that just about covers everything that I didn't like about the Final Fantasy VII game. I'm sorry that this ended up lasting a little longer than I had planned. Bye-bye, and God bless.